The story took place inside a highly secured maximum security prison. Jason was brought in as just another inmate, and the guards treated him like nothing more than a problem that needed to be managed. But on his very first night, the inmates who tried to mess with him in the cell were quickly taken down. The next day in the cafeteria, a bald gang member walked up and spat into Jason's food tray without hesitation. Moments later, the gang leader Chenko appeared right behind him. Jason was then taken to meet the warden. The warden wasn't there to punish him, but to introduce something far more unusual, a deadly racing competition held inside the prison. Jason had once been a professional racer, but after a fatal accident he lost everything, and his family life was later destroyed by men in black, which eventually led to his imprisonment. On the surface, the prison looked normal, but under the warden's control, death races were organized using heavily modified combat vehicles. Inmates who could win 5 consecutive races would earn their freedom. The former star driver Frank had already won 4 races, but in the final one, his car was destroyed by a special attack. He survived, but was no longer able to compete. To fill the gap, the warden chose Jason to replace Frank. He was given Frank's identity mask and told to finish the final race. If he won, he would be set free. Jason agreed. He was then brought to the racing team, where the crew showed him the vehicle, a heavily modified V8 Mustang equipped with machine guns, nitro boost, armor plating, and multiple weapon systems. It was basically a combat machine on wheels. The next day during yard time, Jason was introduced to the other racers. The bald fighter 14,000 was a triad member with 7 kills. The mustached racer Green had a life sentence and 12 confirmed kills. Chenko, the warden's enforcer, had 9 kills. And there was also a technical driver named Cortez with 3 kills. At that moment, Big Bill, the man who had taken Frank out in the previous race, showed up and openly warned that anyone who brought Frank back would die. Jason then noticed a group of inmates being transported off the bus. They were mechanics for the race, all wearing tracking wristbands, which reminded him of the same devices worn by the attackers on the night he was framed. Soon after, the death race officially began. Before the start, the warden handed Jason Frank's ring, symbolizing the continuation of his identity. On the track, heavily armed vehicles lined up. At the same time, a bus arrived carrying navigators from the women's prison. Jason's navigator, Casey, immediately realized the man behind the mask wasn't Frank. Jason didn't deny it and continued the race anyway. The rules were simple: 3 races, 3 laps each. Weapon systems would activate after the second lap, and only the last survivor would win. As the lights turned green, the race began. Jason was immediately boxed in by multiple cars and dropped to the back. Casey quickly guided him through alternate routes, and Jason went full throttle, drifting past opponents and surging into the lead. During the first lap, there were no weapons yet, so it was pure vehicle combat. Big Bill drove a modified Dodge Ram and slammed into Jason, forcing him off the track, but Jason recovered quickly and rejoined the race. At the end of the first lap, the system activated weapon modules. Drivers had to trigger activation points to unlock their weapons. The first racer to activate immediately opened fire, spraying bullets across the track. The mustached driver came under heavy fire and was forced to slow down, returning fire by ramming his vehicle into the enemy car, pushing the race into full combat mode. The skull trap wasn't just filled with steel spikes. Once triggered, it would slam downward and crush both car and driver into pieces. A massive explosion followed, and the first racer was eliminated instantly. Seeing the mustached driver equipped with a level 13 heavy cannon system, Jason immediately became the target of intense fire. The mustached driver activated defensive systems and released lubricant from the rear of the car. Slipping away from pursuit and narrowly escaping destruction, he then activated an electronic interference system and briefly turned the tables, but his advantage lasted only seconds before he was overwhelmed again. The explosion threw his car into the air. He crawled out of the wreck, thinking he had survived, but Big Bill Machine Gun Joe was already there and finished him off. The race continued, and Jason successfully activated his weapon system, but a problem appeared immediately. The gun barrel jammed and wouldn't fire. Casey climbed out of the passenger window with a wrench to fix it manually, exposing herself as an easy target to enemy fire, even after the weapon was restored. Pachenko's firepower from behind was overwhelming, and Jason's car was taking heavy damage. Jason activated his defensive system, but both the napalm and smoke systems failed, turning his car into a primary target. With the armor weakening fast, the veteran warned him that if he didn't act soon, he was done for. Casey manually triggered the napalm system, taking out one opponent and briefly stabilizing the situation. As the first race neared its end, Jason prepared to overtake, but he saw Pachenko make a shooting gesture, the same man he had previously seen in black clothing on surveillance footage. In that split second of distraction, Big Bill rammed him from the side, pushing Jason off the track. Jason finished sixth in the first race, and his vehicle was nearly destroyed. However, he noticed the defensive fuel system was still intact. Casey left without much explanation, and Pachenko's presence confirmed to Jason that something deeper was going on behind the race. Jensen went straight to the warden that night and said he wouldn't race in the second round. The warden didn't panic at all. Instead, he had the cuffs removed and placed a photo of Jensen's daughter on the table, making it clear what the consequences would be. Jensen didn't confront him. He simply took the photo and walked away. That night, he followed Pachenko into the repair area, but was quickly ambushed by his men. After being pinned down, Pachenko moved in to finish him off. At the critical moment, Fat Man suddenly attacked from the side, turning the situation around. Jensen used the chaos to fight back and fully take control of Pachenko. Using tools, he forced a confession. Pachenko admitted he was only following orders from the prison. Guards quickly stepped in and took Pachenko away temporarily. The second elimination round soon began. At the start, all other racers rushed out. While Jensen deliberately delayed his launch, he dragged a fuel tanker forward from the start line and asked Case, "Did you take out Frank last time?" Case didn't answer. Jensen directly threatened to trigger the explosive device, forced into a corner. Case admitted she had been ordered by the warden to sabotage the defense systems, ensuring no one could ever win 5 races in a row, keeping the money flowing. With the answer he needed, Jensen activated Nitro and closed the gap on the pack. He first rammed Big Bill out of position, then pushed forward toward the leaders. At that moment, Pachenko was in front. Jensen locked in on him. This round was about revenge. Running side by side, Jensen didn't activate defense first. Instead, he powered up his weapons, preparing for a head-on confrontation. The exchange ended with neither side gaining the upper hand. Jensen quickly swerved, releasing smoke to cover his retreat. Once the others moved ahead, he reversed back into position and found Tyrese again. Tyrese was crawling out of his wrecked car when Jensen stepped out, knocked him down again, and finished him cleanly, staring straight into the camera as a warning to the warden. The warden only smirked. He immediately deployed the Dreadnought, a heavily modified armored assault truck. It opened fire instantly, dominating the field and wiping out multiple racers in seconds. Within moments, 2 cars were destroyed, leaving only Jason, Hennessy, and 14K. Inside the tunnel, the Dreadnought unleashed heavy fire. 14K was forced into a corner and his car was pierced by a massive drill-like spike, killing the passenger instantly. The truck followed up with machine gun fire and chained weapons, eliminating 14,000 completely. Seeing the situation, Jason contacted Hennessy and proposed a temporary alliance. The 2 cars split the attack from both sides of the Dreadnought and broke through its firepower to escape the tunnel. The maneuver enraged the warden, but the race continued. Jason later entered Hennessy's pit area and exposed the warden's entire plan. Meanwhile, guards secretly planted a bomb under Jason's car to control him. The final elimination round began with only Jason and Hennessy left. The warden handed Jason a signed release form, promising freedom if he won. At the start, the first lap immediately triggered weapon activation, but the system had been rigged, giving Hennessy the advantage. He launched a relentless assault, forcing Jason into constant evasion while his own defenses remained disabled due to earlier sabotage. Just as the armor was about to fail, Jason ordered Case to deploy the rear tombstone countermeasure. It helped, but only briefly. Hennessy then fired a missile and secured even more control of the race. Realizing they were slipping out of control, the warden sent multiple police cars in pursuit. A dozen vehicles joined the chase within minutes, but this was exactly what Jason had planned. The ambush vehicles were gradually eliminated as they pushed through the blockade. Helicopters joined the pursuit, splitting the team. Jason drew all the fire while Hennessy escaped as planned. Using the release papers, they executed a staged escape. Soon, Hennessy and Jason reunited. While Case, still disguised as Frankenstein's proxy, was surrounded by police, the 2 boarded a train and disappeared, finally breaking free from the prison system. The warden sat in his office, confident everything was still under control, and opened his victory package. 18 months later, Jason and Hennessy were working at a repair shop. A muscle car roared in and a woman walked up to Jason. The story ended there. What looked like a race of speed and violence was really a test of humanity. Jason wasn't just fighting for freedom, he was fighting for people treated like disposable tools. The prison turned human lives into ratings and bets, forgetting that people eventually push back. Because in the end, the hardest part wasn't the crashes or the blood, it was watching life itself turned into a game. True freedom isn't something you win. It starts the moment you refuse to be defined.